this afternoon we're just going to talk fairly briefly on the subjects of shamatha, or calm abiding meditation, and on the four immeasurable meditations. So we only have a short time to complete quite a lot of material here. So how many of you don't know anything about shamatha meditation? Okay. Basically, Buddhism feels that the trouble that we experience in our life is mainly created by our unruly, uncontrolled minds. We blame outer circumstances, other people, our families, our parents, our partners, our children, the government, anything. But ultimately, the real problem lies within ourselves, in our own mind. And the fact that our minds are so often controlled by negative emotions, such as our greed and our attachment and cravings, by our aggression and anger, frustrations, by our envy and jealousy of others' good fortunes, by our own pride. Pride in Buddhism doesn't just mean thinking we're better than others. It also includes thinking we are just as good as others, or that we are inferior to others. Because all of it is centered around the idea of me comparing myself with others. Whether I think I'm better or worse, or just as good as, it's still self-focused, egocentrically focused. So that all comes under the idea of pride. And the root of all these afflictive emotions which we have, our fears, our depressions, our angers, our greeds and desires, and so forth, which disturb the mind, which churn up the mind continually. The root is this grasping at the idea of a solid, immutable, independent, everlasting me at the center of everything. So therefore everything happens to me. And in order to make this sense of self feel comfortable, then we grasp at and attach ourselves to anything we think will give pleasure to me, and get frustrated and angry and upset at anything which we think will give any kind of pain or displeasure to me. We do it constantly. You think other people do that, I don't. You're going to be sitting here for 2 hours. Now you watch. Just very simply, you watch. After, depending on how used you are to sitting cross-legged, after half an hour, definitely 2 hours, your body is going to say, what's going on here? Isn't it? And so you're going to start moving, putting your legs up, trying to sit more comfortably. Now that is pleasure-pain principle, right? We are trying to be comfortable. We are trying to attract comfort to ourselves. We're trying to avoid anything which is painful. So we do it automatically. It's not even good or bad. It just is how we are. I mean, even the dogs will do that. Right? I mean, dogs will always find the most comfortable place to sleep. In the winter, they sit in the sun. In the summer, they go in the shade. Somebody the other day left a yoga mat out and the dog was lying on it next morning. Of course, this is part of our animal behavior, but it stirs up the mind. This is not a talk on the Buddhist principles of false identification with an ego and not recognizing our true nature. This is very fundamental, how to get our minds into some sort of order so that wisdom can arise in our meditations. Insight can arise into our true nature. If we consider the mind like a wild horse, like any wild animal. We would take a wild horse because horses we make use of. So you look at this wild horse and we think, wow, that horse, it has real potential. It could be a really good horse, but it's wild. I cannot train it because it does not obey me. I want it to go here, it will go there. I want it to stay quiet, it will run around. I want it to run around, it will just stand. It won't do what I want because it's a wild horse. So in order to train this horse, we first have to tame it. We have to quieten it down so that the horse thinks, I don't know, maybe being trained might be fun. It no longer thinks, who is that person? That person's trying to harm me. I don't want anything to do with them. No, maybe it would be fun to be trained. Now, we can train horses in two ways. We can tame them in two ways. Either we can beat it into submission, like these poor donkeys you see, you know, going along, carrying heavy weights, completely miserable, but tamed. But that's not the kind of mind we want. We don't want a mind which is just quiet because it's so suppressed and because it's within very, very tight limits and frightened to go outside those limits. So there's another way of taming a horse. And that is by befriending the horse. Making the horse feel, you know, amenable to being trained. You know, you bring it, you coax it, you stroke it. The horse begins to think, oh, they're not bad people. This might be nice. And then it wants to be helpful. And so likewise with the mind, we can get the mind to become more calm, more clear. Then the mind starts to think, actually this feels comfortable. This feels very nice. I like this. I want to learn more about this. This seems like a good thing to do. So that is what shamatha is about. Shamatha is the idea of evenness, of you know, not going up and down. And in Tibetan it was translated as shine. Shine means, again, to dwell in peacefulness. So often in English it's called calm abiding. It is the mind which is able to not only be more calm, but also focused. Focused. Attention span. It means that when we want to put our mind somewhere, the mind will rest in that place. Now, normally we think we are pretty much in control of our mind. I think the first thing that one learns when one starts to meditate is humility. Because one realizes very quickly how totally out of control our mind normally is. We say, okay, now sit nicely, and then focus the attention on the breath. Right, that seems fairly simple. One thing we have in common is we're all breathing. And the other thing about the breath is that although it is an automatic function, like our heartbeats and the liver and kidneys, they're all functioning happily without our interference, nonetheless, the breath, if we say, hold your breath, you can all hold your breath, at least for some time. If we say, breathe rapidly, everybody can breathe rapidly. Also, the breath is a bridge between the body and the mind. It is, if we are fearful, if we are angry, if we are excited, if we are peaceful, if we are happy, if we are sad, our breathing changes. So our breath actually reflects pretty accurately the state of our mind. Therefore, as we focus on the breathing, and the breathing of itself gradually becomes more slow, then also the mind begins to calm down, if the mind is focused on the breath. But the most important thing about the breath, as an object of meditation, is that we cannot breathe in the past or in the future. We can only breathe now. And so, if we are conscious, if we know the breath at the time of breathing, without mental commentary, just knowing it, then we are present. It's a very skillful way to bring the mind into the now. And this was highly recommended by the Buddha himself, who used breath meditation as one of his main practices, and is something which is incorporated in all Buddhist schools, in Zen, in Theravada, and in the Tibetan tradition. Everybody uses breath as a hook to catch the mind. Tomorrow, I'm sure that Glenn will go into all of this much more. Today we're just dealing with the theory. We are not dealing with the actual practice. Tomorrow there will be a course on shamatha meditation and a chance for you to practice. But it's very basic and simple, is that we just sit nicely. The most important thing is to keep the back straight so that the energies flow up and down the spine. Whether we sit on the ground, or whether we sit in a chair, or even flat out in corpse pose. As long as the spine is straight, the energies are flowing smoothly, and it works just the same. I mean, the idea of always sitting cross-legged comes because these practices were taught originally in India. And as we all know, in India, everybody sits like that. I mean, for them to sit cross-legged is no problem because since childhood they've been sitting cross-legged. So, and if you sit in perfect Padmasana, then it actually creates a perfect triangle for the body and naturally makes the spine straight. So if one can sit perfectly, then that is indeed the perfect position in which all the energies of the body are flowing freely. But since the majority of people nowadays are not used to sitting like that, it is very important to recognize that it doesn't mean we cannot practice if we're more comfortable sitting in a chair. A while back I was in America, and I went to visit some Zen centers, and in Zen centers they're very strict about sitting very perfectly. It's one of their main practices, is just learning how to sit absolutely rigidly and unmoving. And so I met this one Zen master, and she had just fallen in the bathroom and broken her hip. So she had to, for the first time in 30 years, sit in a chair to meditate, which is a big downfall for a Zen master. And then I went to California and I met this Chinese Zen master, and he had just twisted his ankle, and he also was sitting in a chair for the first time. And then I met another Zen master, and they had also, slipped a disc or something. They were also in a chair, 3 of them, all sitting in chairs. And all of them said the same thing. Doesn't make any difference. They couldn't believe it. They had been so indoctrinated into thinking if you don't sit perfectly on the floor, somehow you've lost something. But they discovered that actually sitting quite comfortably in a chair with your feet on the ground, your mind settles just the same. And you don't have to worry about aching knees, aching hips. You can be comfortable. Because the whole point is that one should drop one's preoccupation with the body. If you're sitting there the whole time just feeling your shoulders hurt, your hips hurt, your legs hurt, everything's hurting, and at the same time we're trying to focus on the breath and get nice and calm and blissful. And oh God, I would be blissful if it wasn't for my knees. Sit in the chair. So I'm sure tomorrow you will be taught by McLeod how to sit nicely, but he also knows very well that just sitting in a perfect posture isn't the end of everything. If you cannot sit perfectly, you can sit how is comfortable, as long as the spine is straight. Then the mind. As I say, most people think that on the whole, generally speaking, their minds are pretty okay. And it's only when we start to really get the mind to settle in one place, on one point, do we recognize that we are absolutely not the masters of our own mind. We are totally the slaves of our minds. And this is a very sad situation because we take our minds with us everywhere. We cannot leave our mind behind. Even in sleep, we have the mind. We can go all around the globe. We can go to Mars or Venus. We take our mind with us. And the mind feeds to us everything that we know. Because of our delusion, we imagine that there's a reality out there, and then there's ourselves in here. And we are here facing an external reality, which we're now going to relate to. But actually, and this is now very interestingly being proved scientifically, not only are we not at all who we think we are and the being that we are identifying ourselves with, but also this external reality which we believe in so much is mostly a fabrication of our own minds. Nowadays, neuroscientists are showing how the sense organs, our eyes especially, and our ears, nose, mouth, but our eyes, because that is what projects to us our external reality, actually only picks up a very, very rough and totally inexact picture of what is going on out there. And for example, I look at this flower. Now, actually what is being projected back to me is a very rough kind of red thing. Which, even to say red, is again the mind saying red, right? I mean, there are certain wavelengths which project what we consider to be red. Now, the minute I see it, my mind, like a very, very clever computer, immediately tells me, oh, that's a rhododendron. But where is the rhododendron? And the details of that rhododendron also apparently are manufactured within our own brain. Actually, our senses don't see that much. The rest of it is put together instantaneously by our mental factors, our brain, which is very, very clever. And along with that, that would be fine. Okay, so I see it, and I name it as a rhododendron. But then comes, do I like rhododendrons? What is my personal feeling about rhododendrons? Plus all the stories I could tell you about rhododendrons. And so we don't just see the thing, but then we overlay it with all our likes, dislikes, prejudices, and so forth. So we never see the thing in itself. We just always see our version of it, our projection of it. Which is why it is considered that, the outer world is, they say like a dream or a rainbow or a magic show. So, therefore, we are trapped in our minds. Not only our internal memories, ideas, judgments, prejudices, beliefs are created by the mind, but also our external projection. That's all the mind. And that would be okay if our mind was in our own control, but it isn't. And our mind is like a glass which is covered with many, many different colors. So we don't even see clearly. We just see distorted through all the colors. Maybe the colors are pretty, nice yellows and blues and greens, or maybe they're very dark browns and blacks and grays. But all of it is preventing us from seeing things as they really are. We only see our version. On a very simple level, we all know this. If we wake up and it's a gloomy day, everything is gloomy. If we wake up and we're feeling in a good mood, even the darkest day is blue. Right? I mean, everybody knows this. It's not something which is particularly profound, but what is profound is that the problem lies in our own minds, which are so completely untamed and untrained. And so our suffering, while we want to be happy, while we want to feel good and joyful and kind and friendly and compassionate, why is it that we feel depressed and angry and upset and jealous and so forth? We don't choose that. We don't wake up in the morning and think, well, I don't know, I think today maybe I'll be nasty and mean and depressed and basically irritable with everybody. That sounds like a good day. I mean, if we had a choice, we would choose to feel good. It doesn't feel nice to be angry. We would much rather be patient, because it makes us feel better, as well as, helping with our relationship with others. So why, since it's my mind, can't I tell my mind to obey me and be happy and kind and friendly and totally patient under all circumstances? Why doesn't it obey? So this is a problem, because how I am feeling inside is how I relate to others on the outside, and then my thoughts become my speech, become my actions, therefore affect others, affect the neighborhood, affect the world, problems we have on this planet are mostly caused by humans, isn't it? I mean, tigers and elephants, what do they do? I mean, the amount of distraction they cause is minimal. I mean, the wildest beasts on this planet, as we all know, are the humans. We have completely messed up our planet because of our greed, because of our aggression, and basically because of our ignorance. That all comes from our mind. So, if we want happiness, and if we want to genuinely have a heart which is kind and considerate and compassionate, we have work to do. It's not enough just to read books. It's not enough just to attend talks. That's good, but it's not enough. We were just talking at lunch about during the Kala Chakra in Washington, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was giving this very important empowerment and at the same time very profound teachings on compassion and bodhicitta, loving kindness, how to be a good person. And then came to the part in the Wongs where they hand out the blessing cords and the kusha grass. And there was a riot. This was a baseball stadium, and the people who ran the baseball stadium had said they had never seen such aggression and pandemonium in their lives. These were nice, friendly, peaceful Buddhists, Westerners even, who were just taking the Kala Chakra initiation. That's my kusha. She was saying that they even, people had a string around in their hand and somebody else would pull it out their hand. So what we're saying is that the theory might be very good, but we need a bit of practice. So, we can also compare it to like if we are building a temple. People come into the temple, they see the beautiful murals and the statues and everything, and they say, oh, what a beautiful temple. But this temple could not exist if it were not for the deep foundations which were dug first. I know when we built our temple in our nunnery, it took about 18 months, 2 years just to build the foundations and put in all the plumbing. And you know, people come to visit and you don't say, oh, do come and look at our beautiful foundations. Aren't they gorgeous? I mean, look at it, so deep, so strong. And who cares about foundations, right? They want to see the temple up and the murals and the golden roof. And so that's a bit like us when we come to the Dharma. There are all these exciting practices out there, you know, and nowadays you can read about them all. It's all out there, translated. You don't have to wait till you get the empowerment and the oral transmission and the permission from the lamas. You just go to a bookshop or a library and you pick